there were people also ready to make this vision work. Execution isn't just about having a vision and having the will to make it happen. Being able to attract the right talent, the talent of the same thinking and beliefs, come together, monitoring, executing, and there's a hall in honor of Dr. Felix Ihugwere, there's another hall in honor of so many different personalities. It's the collective will of people across divides, of people across religion, of people across age, that has made the Pan-Atlantic story a success. Can we give them a round of applause? So, we have made progress in a way, but let me contrast this to the people sitting around me yesterday saying they will never fly Air Peace, but they are stuck here because they have no option. Why delays? Let me contrast it to listening to my brother Frank talk about the fact that the chairman of the Board of Advisors has said that the private sector today is not as influential as it used to be, and it could be for different reasons. Let me contrast it to going to my village. I talked about Lekki. But you know, and it's a good tradition, by the way, when you lose the older ones and those who insist that they need to be buried back home, even if you have not visited there for a long time, it's a good practice because for those who want to really build Nigeria, for you to go round Nigeria. And my memory of my village when I was growing up, we didn't grow up there. My father grew up there but left for Benin and then Lagos, and then Ilorin and back to Lagos. It was fun. I remember my grandfather. I remember the very thick green forest. And I love the oxygen around the environment. And it stuck with me. I didn't visit that often, but I truly felt home. So when I went back for my father's, as part of my father's burial ceremonies, we had to visit the village. It was a different story. All the trees gone. The thick vegetation gone. The houses empty. The people you see walking around are either drug addicts who they've been put there because it's easier to manage them there, or very young people playing around, ready to go to the big city. And that tells me, and I remember my mom sometimes will reflect, my late mom, you mean that the president of Nigeria will solve all these problems? It's not possible. And as I contrast this, I say, how do we get this accelerated economic growth? How? Because that's not to say we are not growing. And let me bring up the outcome of my chat with GPT. And when the chairman was asking me how many of these things they are bringing up to the stage do I need, I said everything, because they all had a role to play. in getting ready for this speech, I said, I don't have that much time. I honestly, and by the way I'm putting out an advert, I still don't have an assistant who will work with me through the hours. There are good people that look at me and say I must be crazy at the sheer amount of work I do. So I'm still searching. But I realized that something that has changed between 1993 and now is ChatGPT, AI. And I started these conversations, you could put it, with ChatGPT, and all the data you can think about. That in 1993, we used to go to libraries, brainstorm, read books, ask for a World Bank journal, everything. I got it in like 30 minutes. So let me give you a sense. But in this sense, and I know I'm running out of time, there's a lot I could cover in this. I know in the Lagos Business School, and I think I've heard it somewhere, there's this methodology that is used maybe in strategy, and I know, and that is, where are we? Where do you want to be? How do you get there? It's actually a product of the work we did at Vision 2010. We're trying to look, and I led the technical team for that effort. We're trying to think of a simple way that could help explain the need to strategize, to need to envision, and the need to think through how to do. So I'm going to use this framework to quickly drive, and I'm not going to go into details, don't worry, a reflection on where we are. And I've mentioned some of it from my personal experience, but let me talk about what my chat with ChatGPT came up with. And I asked ChatGPT, my research assistant, give me a chart of Nigerian events, African events, global events against NESG achievements. And I have this whole list between, in fact, 1982 and 2024. So the governor of Lagos beat me by talking about 1993, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But let me talk about some of the global events around that pre-93, so that you have a sense, and then post. But one thing is clear, in Nigeria, a lot of different, the same things we're facing today, by the way. Economic ups and downs. First of all, 1983. No, let me start with 1982. Economic downturn, beginning with the falling oil prices. Then the coup by General Muhammad Buhari. 1984, Nigeria changes national currency. I'm sure some people don't realize that. Another coup in 1985. Structural adjustment program. And it was around that time you had a lot of JAPA at that time, but not at the same scale as we're having JAPA today. Then we talk about political liberalization, And then around that time, Pan Am Flight 103 bombing, there was a plane called Pan Am. People don't realize that. Fall of the Berlin Wall. Germany used to be divided. Some people don't realize that. Dissolution of the Soviet Union. So in 1991 was when the Soviet Union was dissolved. However, one interesting factor here is when I asked ChatGPT, which are the economic success stories, that have shown, I'll say, real radical transformation change. Some of the outputs of this dissolution were those mentioned. Georgia, Estonia, for example. And what that tells us is that between 1991 and 2024, massive change has actually happened at country level. The states, but for us in Nigeria, we have the creation of new states from 21 to 30, and the list goes on. In fact, in Africa, Nelson Mandela was elected. So we came to birth as the NESG amidst a lot of changes, and the changes continue to this very day. And ChatGPT acknowledges the role of the NESG. Policy advocacy and development, stakeholder engagement, research analysis, and let me quote ChatGPT. Over the 3 decades, from 1993 to 2024, Nigeria's development trajectory has been a complex interplay of economic growth, social changes, and political evolution. True. Because even ChatGPT makes mistakes, but that's true. The NESG's role has been integral in shaping policy direction and fostering a conducive environment for dialogue and reform. And it goes on. So we do need to give kudos to the NESG for providing that platform. And can we please give them a round of applause? But then I continue in my conversation. What more can the NESG do, since we're discussing the future? Enhance political advocacy, education and workforce development, and it goes on. And then I now say, okay, so we need to do all this, but are we where we want to be? Are we where we want to be? And I asked for, give me a comparison of Nigeria to Vietnam, to China, to Saudi Arabia for the years 1993 and 2023, and do it in a tabular format. And I have it. And in here, you can see that a country like Vietnam, as of 1993, had a GDP growth rate of 8.1%. It has dropped to 6.5% in 2023. But more importantly is when you look at GDP per capita, it has moved from $243 to $2,766. In the same vein, Nigeria in 1993 had a GDP of 3.1, 2023, 3.8. So there's been some growth, but an income per capita, GDP per capita has moved from 864 to 2,000. So but let me look at China. And China, if we look at the population, because Vietnam is less than us, so 98 million, so you could say, oh, it's a smaller country. Even Estonia. Estonia is not even as big as Lekki area, let's put it that way. So sometimes we say we can't really compare, but let's look at China. In 1993, GDP growth rate was 13.5%, dropped to 5.7%, but note that as your GDP increases, the rate of reduces even if it is growing.